What is up, summoners? Welcome to the channel today to this first look video on Spider-Man Stark Tech. Did I say that right? Guess I should have wrote that down somewhere. Spider-Man Homecoming. I'm just going to keep calling him that. Really have been looking forward to this hero dropping in the contest. I really like Spider-Man as a character. I've been having, and I guess hoping, having high hopes that he would be a good character, that we would see things from him that we have not necessarily seen in the game before, that he'd actually be somebody we could play with outside of like the other Spider-Man, just throwing him on defense. And from a very first initial impressions, he's looking very good. I'm going to take some time now to walk through all of his abilities and give you where I think he's going to be useful at, kind of my overall opinion on him. I know initially there was some talk that there was going to be some sort of like a battery system similar to Punisher. I saw some of that. I really wasn't too hyped for that, so I'm glad to see that it hasn't actually been implemented. But he's got a very different flavor from the original Spider-Man. So, jumping right into his signature ability here, he's got kind of a beast feel as far as he has two different modes that he's going to be in based upon his health percentage. So Beast, he's got a defensive stance and an offensive stance, and Spider-Man here's got something very similar to that. Above 50% health, he has a greater power. So basically, his poise charges that he gets are going to give him increased critical rating. Also, the taunts that you place on the enemy are going to last 2 seconds longer, excuse me. And taunts actually, they reduce the attack power of the enemy and also increase the chance for them to use a special. So that's actually really nice. So that's kind of his offensive side when he's above 50% health. When he's below 50% health, greater responsibility, that's when he goes into more of a defensive stance, if you want to call it that. His chance to evade increases from 3%, which if you look right below the signature ability, it's a passive 3%. So you're adding 7% on top of that, so now he's going to have a passive 10% chance to evade, plus the Stark Tech, which I'll get into in a second, but he's got a 10% flat rate to evade. And then the poise charges that you've got are converted into an increased block proficiency. So really, the only thing about this is he doesn't have any sort of regen, so it's not like you're going to be able to control going back and forth depending upon what stance you want to be in. Once you fall below that 50% health, willpower, I guess, is the only thing that could trigger you back above that 50% health. But really, once you're below that, you're going to have to finish the fight, pump some revives, or not revives, but potions into him to push him back into that greater power. Greater power is probably the one you're going to spend most of your, or want to be in most of the time, just because you have the increase to your damage, increase to the chance for the enemy to bait out specials. Right below that, like I mentioned, he has a 3% chance to evade, flat percent chance. That's the same as Black Widow. Then plus the 7% once you fall below the 50%. But then you take that overall, either 3% or 10% if you're below 50% health. And if you look at the Stark Tech AI, against special attacks, he has a 60% chance to evade special attacks, and he does not need to be awakened for any of that. That is really good. I am assuming that that 60% chance is going to be added on top of his base 3%, and then increase that by another 7% if he's below 50% health. So if he's below 50% health, you're going to have a 70% chance to evade all attacks, which gives him kind of a Daredevil flavor as well. Really like to see that. That cannot be overlooked. I think, I'm just going to say right here, I think that Spider-Man actually looks like he's going to be a very strong offensive character for Alliance Wars. Being able to, and I'll talk about it here in a minute, being able to power drain, being able to have the reliable evade, being able to taunt out specials. I think he looks like he's going to be a very strong Alliance War offensive character. So yeah, that's just kind of my initial thoughts here. I know we haven't gotten very far into it, but let's continue to scroll down here. So the Stark Tech, the AI that gives you the 60% chance to evade, the only time that you will lose that is if you are hit with a heavy attack. It will go into a cooldown, it'll shut down, it'll take 10 seconds, and then it'll pop back up. During those 10 seconds, you'll lose your 60% chance to evade specials. Outside of heavy attacks, if you are hit by any attack from a cosmic character, so class disadvantage, you're also going to lose it as well. Typically, you do not see very many cosmic characters outside of Hyperion. Hyperion is about the only character you run into on Alliance Wars. And really, if you've got the taunt, being able to bait out his specials, hopefully that is one way you'll be able to work around that, because his S3 he gets to very quickly. But if you have the power control with the heavy, and I'll talk about that in a second, you also have the taunt, being able to bait out specials. You should be able to play around that pretty effectively. So Stark Tech AI looks pretty cool. All right, let me scroll down here and we'll talk about everything under Smack Talk right there. So the first thing is the Poise Charge and how you gain it. And I mentioned the Poise Charge earlier in his signature ability. Each charge either increases your critical rate or increases your block proficiency when you have, that's how it interacts with your signature ability. But outside of that, each charge also passively increases your attack rating, regardless of if you're above or below 50% health, if you're awakened. So the way that you get your poise charges is every time you auto evade, which that's going to be happening a lot, especially when you're below 50% health. If he's awakened, 10% chance to auto evade is quite a bit. So auto evading is going to trigger this thing a lot. And then obviously if you use your dexterity buff, if that pops up, it's also going to be grabbing a poise charge. Now it does not say here what the maximum number of poise charges is that you can have. I would assume that there's probably not a cap on that, because you're going to be converting a lot of those over into taunts. If you go below there where it talks about the attack rating, if Spider-Man lands 5 uninterrupted attacks, he converts one of those poise charges over into a taunt debuff, which lasts for 3 seconds. Taunts actually increase, if you go all the way down to the bottom there, taunts decrease, the attack power of the enemy by 40%, and they have an increased chance to trigger special attacks by 70%. That lasts for 3 seconds. Now remember, if you're below 50% health and you're awakened, that taunt is actually going to last an additional 2 seconds, so it's going to be 5 seconds. And then obviously you can read there, it lasts 50% longer if it's against villain opponents. So for instance, if you're going against, let's just say Venom, and you're below 50% health, it's going to be the 5 seconds plus 50% on top of that. So that's actually going to be 7.5 second taunt, which I know even as 7.5 seconds doesn't sound like a long time, but remember, you're going to be gaining poise charges and you're going to be converting those into taunts a lot throughout the fight. It only takes 5 hits. It's a 5-hit combo to place one of these taunts. So it's going to be happening a lot. Also, if you are in a situation, and this is going to be very useful against enemies in Alliance War who have power gain, like Hyperion, like Mordo, anybody else who has got some sort of increase to their power, being able to control it by swiping back through a special attack. If you stand there, you're actually, for 1 second, you're going to be able to refresh the taunt on the enemy. So it kind of gives you some more time without having to do the 5-hit combo and give them more power to be able to bait out more specials. So very, very interesting mechanic here. We've never seen anything like this before. Oftentimes, Kabam in the past has never been very forthcoming about the either percentage chance or how you bait out specials or how the enemy interacts with the specials. But clearly, based upon this number at 70%, there is some algorithm, there is some number somewhere that determines what the chances are that you're going to be able to bait out a special. Depending upon how close you are to them, how aggressive that particular character is. So whatever it is, whatever that number is, there's a 70% higher chance to get them, and that's a big number, 70%. Most of the time, I don't have issues baiting out specials as it is. So having that number plus 70% is really, really nice. So again, that kind of all ties back around to what I was saying earlier, where I think he's going to be very, very useful in Alliance Wars. So let's continue to move forward here. Let me play it. The next thing I think we're going to talk about, wait for it to scroll down here, is the heavy attack. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so the heavy attacks have a 45% power drain, which is really, really strong. I mean, you're talking almost, if they're at 3 bars of power, that's going to drop them all the way down basically to 1.5 bars. Now, the flip side of that is there is a 30-second cooldown, which is a very long cooldown. If you were in, an Alliance war fight where this is going to be most useful at, you're only going to be able to use it maybe once or twice at the most. But again, remember, with having the taunt on the enemy a lot throughout the fight, you're going to be baiting out those specials. So if you really get into a pinch and you can't seem to taunt it out, or you don't have an ability to hit the enemy to place the taunt because it would push them into an S3, you can always parry stun and then fire off your heavy attack. I would probably not use that. I would hold that for as long as possible to make sure that you always have it for when you actually need it. If you are unable to parry, or they've got limber or something, and you don't have enough time there to use the heavy, that's where the special attack 1 comes in. It has a 50% chance to stun for 2 seconds. The chance is increased to 100% if your Stark Tech AI is active, which really you should not be getting hit by heavy attacks. And again, if you're playing against Cosmic, try not to get hit at all. I guess that's easier said than done. But as long as your Stark Tech is active, it's a 100% chance to stun for 2 seconds. And then you can fire off that heavy if you need to power drain. The special attack 2, let me scroll down here a little bit. So this is the Electric Web Shot. It's a 70% chance to shock the opponent, dealing energy damage over 6.5 seconds. These shock effects are overcharged and deal double damage against robot champions, which right now in the game, that sounds awesome, but right now we don't have a ton of robot champs that you run into, especially like in Alliance Wars right now. Everybody's Mystic. There aren't any robot champs there. I don't know if this hints at the fact that maybe there are more coming to the game, hopefully in the future or maybe soon. But yeah, just kind of put that in your back pocket and hang on to it. The other thing I will mention is the Special Attack 2 actually has several animation components to it, and it looks like every single one of those, I'll show some gameplay here in a second, every single one of those has an ability to trigger this electric web shot and gain the shock component or shock on the enemy. So I don't know, it doesn't look super OP, but again, this is a very, very low ranked Spider-Man, so I'd be interested to see what that actually would turn into at a higher, maybe 4-star 550 character. And then finally on the S3, it has a 100% chance to ensnare the opponent, and this is really cool. For 18 seconds, ensnare champions suffer 30% reduced ability accuracy and cannot trigger passive evade effects. So his S1 and his S2 don't really seem particularly OP or like they're going to hit really, really hard. So if you are in a situation where you can hang on to your S3, it looks like you're probably going to want to use your S3 as much as possible. 18 seconds actually is quite a bit of time. 18 seconds is going to give you more than enough time probably to get back to possibly 2 bars of power, maybe a bar and a half, somewhere around there. So the downtime on this, I would say, is about 50%. If you went for an S3 every single time, I would say the uptime on the ensnared enemy is probably going to be somewhere around 50%. Maybe, yeah, I would say about 50-60% of the time, which again, if we're applying this over into Alliance Wars, if you're looking at characters like Nightcrawler, if you're having issues with Nightcrawler, which he can be a huge pain if you can't get him moved over into his swashbuckling form, as long as you're S3, you've got that fired, they're ensnared, they cannot auto-evade you. Reduced ability accuracy by 30%, which is really, really cool. I think overall, I'm very, very excited about this champion. He looks really cool. He's got some interesting effects that we've not seen before. He's got several components from other characters that we've seen kind of put into him. As far as kind of like I mentioned earlier, the Beast flavor, as far as the 2 different stances. He's got a little bit of OG Daredevil built into him as well, with the flat percentage chance to evade special attacks, which I'm really excited about that one in particular, because if I use him in Alliance War, if I brought him in for the unblockable S2, a lot of times now I'm running into Dormammu, so having a high fixed percent chance to evade most of his S2, and then also have the ability to power drain him with a heavy attack is also going to help with the Mystic Dispersion and hopefully help keep him under control. But yeah, I am really, really excited for this champ. I'm not going to say he's like OP or necessarily God tier yet, but as far as the tier list go, I would say he's kind of 1A, probably in that second tier right now. We'll kind of give him more of an evaluation once we actually get our hands on him. Okay, at this point, I want to go into some of the gameplay here, and unfortunately, because he is such a low ranking character, I'm not really going to be able to hit him. It would kill him too quickly, which means we're not going to be able to see a couple of different things here. Mainly the poise charges. He's not going to be auto-evading because I'm not hitting him, so we don't see the poise charges come in, and then obviously those are not going to be converted over into taunts because he doesn't have a poise. Right there with the heavy attack is the first time you can see it drained from 3 bars of power all the way down to about a bar and a half, which unfortunately the thing to take away here is that I don't see any sort of like visible cooldown showing when your power drain from your heavy is active again. because what you saw there is I baited out another heavy and it didn't power drain because it's still within the 30 seconds. So that is a little bit annoying, especially if you're trying to time things perfectly together, to not have an ability to know when that power drain is going to be active. The other thing I wanted to show here real quick is I think that heavy attack, I'm not sure if that heavy attack kind of went further. I don't know if that was a ranged heavy attack. I wish I could get him to go back a little bit further and actually use it. It kind of looked like he shot a web forward. I don't know if it was just kind of the animation, but here with the S2 has applied 2 shocks to me. I think that there was a chance there to get possibly 3 of them, but you can only see 2. The other thing that we're missing from this gameplay, and I think he only does it maybe once or twice, is when he does evade back, which he doesn't do very often, but you'll see him stand for just a quick second, and he kind of raises his arm like, "Come at me, bro." What that is refreshing the taunt on the enemy. And yeah, see right there, it just happened again with a heavy attack. I think that heavy attack is actually ranged. I want to go back. Let me pause it real quick here. Yeah, I don't know. That heavy attack looked ranged. I mean, there was a projectile that was moving past me even after I got hit. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just totally seeing things here, but it kind of looks like that heavy attack is actually a ranged attack, which would be really, really cool. So overall, I wish I had more gameplay to show the poise and taunt charges, how those interact, but that will actually have to wait until we get our hands on one to test for ourselves. Having said all of that, I think that I will be going for Spiderman. I keep wanting to call him Homecoming. Spiderman, Stark Tech? I don't know. Spiderman Homecoming is such a better name, but anyway, I think I will be going for him in the featured arena. At this point, I'm not really sure where the community stands on him. I've seen a little bit of mixed reaction so far in some of the live streams and on Twitter, but yeah, I think I'm going to go for him. Looks like he's going to be a solid champ to have on the roster, and I'm very, very excited to be able to actually get my hands on him and test him for myself. So definitely let me know what you think. Let me know if he, if he looks better than what you were thinking, if he's not quite what you were looking for. Yeah, down in the comment section below. Would love to hear from you guys. All right, until I see you all in the next video, have a great day.